This bucket looks harmless. A bit of plastic, a few holes. Inside, only damp straw. But over the next few days, this bucket will quietly decide something important. Will it produce fresh food or turn into a rotten failure? Because inside, something is already starting. A race you cannot see, and whoever wins decides what comes out of these holes. On one side, a fungus that wants to take over the straw. On the other side, mold, bacteria, and anything else that might be faster. And the strange part is this. While it looks like absolutely nothing is happening, something alive is quietly spreading through the straw. No sound, no movement, no warning. Just a hidden network slowly taking control. If everything works, fresh oyster mushrooms will soon burst out of the holes here. If not, it was all for nothing. Today, we'll look step by step at how a simple bucket becomes a small mushroom system and why the decisive battle begins before you can see anything at all. The idea is simple. We are building the fungus a little home. The bucket is not just a container. It is like a mini bunker, dark, moist, and protected on the inside. On the outside are the exits, through which mushrooms will later suddenly burst out. Mushrooms play by completely different rules than plants. What you eventually eat is only the visible part. The real organism stays hidden, a white underground network called mycelium that quietly spreads long before anything appears. And this is exactly where the secret lies. Before mushrooms appear, the fungus builds an empire you never see. Thread by thread, it spreads through the straw, claiming territory before anything becomes visible. It has to run through the straw, unlock nutrients, and push out competitors before we see anything at all. This mycelium needs three things: food, moisture, and a head start against mold and bacteria. That is exactly why everything does not begin with the fungus, but with the straw. Straw turns out to be almost perfect for oyster mushrooms. It holds moisture, traps air, and gives the fungus enough material to slowly move through, like tunnels waiting to be occupied. But dry straw is at first like a locked pantry. That is why it is moistened and prepared. What matters is, later the straw must not be dripping wet. It should be moist like a wrung-out sponge, and this is where everything can tip. This is where many buckets quietly fail. Too dry and the fungus struggles, too wet, and everything starts suffocating. Instead of growing, the bucket begins to rot. Then the substrate does not start to live, but to rot. This exact balance is what makes the experiment exciting. Not wet, not dry, but exactly in between. This moment already decides a lot, even though not a single mushroom can be seen yet. Mushroom cultivation is less magic, and more control over small conditions that ultimately decide everything. Now comes the step that quietly decides everything: heat. Not enough to sterilize the straw completely, just enough to weaken the competition before the real race begins. The goal is not to kill all life. The goal is to push the competition back far enough so that the mushroom spawn gets a head start. The moment the straw cools, the countdown starts. Whoever takes control first wins, the fungus or mold. And once mold gets ahead, the game is usually over. That is the invisible battle inside the bucket. From the outside, later on, you only see a closed container. But inside, it is being decided who wins: the fungus or the competition. That is why cleanliness here is not optional. Cleanliness decides who the bucket feeds, you or the mold. And now, the cliffhanger. If this step is done badly, you do not notice it right away. You only notice it days later. Days later, you open the lid expecting progress, and instead find something green, fuzzy, and wrong. That's the moment you realize the bucket chose mold. The bucket gets small openings. For now, they are only holes in the plastic. Later, this is exactly where the first mushrooms will push out, as if the bucket were breaking open. And that is brilliant. Inside, it stays moist and protected. Outside, the mushrooms later get air and space to form fruiting bodies. Mushrooms do not grow out somewhere by chance. They respond to signals: more oxygen, a bit of light, temperature changes, and space. At first, the holes look meaningless. Later, they become exits. The fungus quietly prepares inside, waiting for the exact moment to push outward. And when the conditions are right, it pushes its fruiting bodies right through these openings. That is the payoff for the holes. At the beginning, they look like a small detail, but later, these exact spots become the exits where life becomes visible. So the bucket is not just a container, it is a stage. Now the mushroom spawn is added. Now the mushroom spawn goes in, material already alive with mycelium. Once mixed into the straw, there is no reset button. The bucket closes, and the waiting begins. Layer by layer, a small ecosystem is now created. The more evenly the mushroom spawn is distributed, the more starting points the mycelium has. And the more starting points there are, the faster it can take over the entire substrate. Oyster mushrooms are especially popular for this because they grow well on straw and are comparatively forgiving for beginners. As soon as the mushroom spawn is in the straw, the countdown begins. From now on, you can no longer simply correct things. The lid goes on, everything is decided inside. From now on, the bucket becomes a mystery. Nothing visible, nothing exciting. From the outside, it almost looks abandoned. But inside, everything is changing. This is the part that is hardest for beginners, waiting. Because for days, nothing seems to happen. No leaf, no shoot, no visible change. And this is exactly where many people would think the experiment has failed. But in reality, this is the most important moment. While nothing seems to happen, the fungus is quietly taking over, connecting, expanding, turning loose straw into living territory. From individual little mycelium points, a connected network gradually forms. And here comes the payoff from the beginning. The boring bucket is not empty. It is active. If everything goes well, the substrate becomes brighter and brighter. White mycelium is a good sign. Green, black, or strongly smelling contamination, on the other hand, is a warning signal. This is where it becomes clear whether the preparation was clean. The pasteurization, the moisture, the distribution of the spawn, everything comes together now. Eventually, something changes. The bucket stops feeling like straw packed in plastic. It feels occupied, prepared, as if something inside has been waiting for permission to emerge. Because now the fungus faces a decision. Will it stay hidden, or will it break out? Then it happens. And then, almost overnight, something strange appears. Tiny pale bumps pressing against the holes. Easy to miss at first. But this is the moment everything changes. Small pale dots. But these are the first fruiting bodies, the so-called pins. And this moment is the second big payoff. The holes, which before only looked like a technical feature, suddenly become exit points for something living. Now, the needs of the fungus change. It wants fresh air, high humidity, and some light. Not direct sunbathing, more like bright but protected. And now, things move fast. What looked tiny yesterday can suddenly explode into full clusters by tomorrow. After days of silence, growth suddenly feels almost aggressive. After days of silence, it suddenly feels as if someone turned the bucket on. Mushrooms grow differently than plants. They do not have to build leaves, do not have to drive roots into soil. When the mycelium is prepared, it pumps water and nutrients into the fruiting bodies, and they push outward almost explosively. Everything before this was preparation. This is the breakout. A silent experiment suddenly becomes something visible, something edible. The perfect harvest time is shortly before the mushroom edges become completely flat or curl strongly upward. Then you carefully take the whole cluster at the base and twist or cut it off. And suddenly, something that did not exist a week ago is sitting in your hand. Fresh food, grown from damp straw inside a plastic bucket. That is the moment this stops feeling like an experiment. It is in your hand. Something that looks like waste, straw, became fresh food. That is the biggest payoff of the entire experiment. At the beginning, you had no garden, no soil, no plant, only a bucket and a substrate. And in the end, you are holding fresh mushrooms in your hand. The fungus won. But the story is not over. If the bucket stays healthy, it produces again and again. One quiet experiment turns into multiple harvests, which is hard to believe when you remember how this started. Just damp straw, a bucket, and something invisible fighting to survive.